Was Christianity the primary reason for the emergence of modern democratic constitutionalism? Some believe that democracy originated in ancient Athens, Greece. Therefore, Athens deserves more credit than Christianity. Others argue that any religion or moral system can teach people to be good. Confucianism also emphasizes self-discipline, so Christianity is not a necessary condition for democracy. Still, others cite Taiwan and Japan as counterexamples, arguing that these countries, not traditionally Christian societies, have still achieved democracy. These views share a common misconception. They confuse the three entirely different concepts of the emergence of thought, the existence of institutions, and whether a civilization can sustain an institution in the long term. To answer this question, we really need to discuss not who first proposed the idea of democracy, but rather what kind of civilizational structure can sustain a democratic system in a long-term, stable, and replicable manner, given the imperfections of human nature. First, ancient Athens was indeed one of the earliest societies in human history to attempt democratic politics. Citizen assemblies, rotating official positions, and direct voting were all democratic practices. However, the problem was that Athenian democracy lacked a systemic distrust of human nature and power. Athenian politics relied heavily on passionate speeches and collective emotions, lacking stable checks and balances, and ultimately collapsed rapidly amidst populism, infighting, and war. Most importantly, Athenian democracy was neither replicable nor sustainable. After the fall of Athens, democracy did not naturally revive in Europe. Rome inherited administration and law, but explicitly rejected democratic politics. Therefore, Athens only proved one thing. Humanity can conceive of democracy as a political form, but it doesn't know how democracy can function sustainably or be replicated. Secondly, all religions, including Confucianism in China, teach people to be good, restrained, and self-disciplined. Why then did only Christianity give rise to modern democratic constitutional systems? Because personal moral cultivation cannot directly evolve into democratic constitutionalism. Democratic constitutionalism has never been designed for a society where everyone consciously strives for good. On the contrary, its existence presupposes that people will do evil and power will be abused. Therefore, the key to democracy lies not in whether people are willing to do good, but in whether the system can function properly when people are not. In this respect, Confucianism and Christianity are fundamentally different. Confucian political ethics are based on the premise of gentlemanly politics, emphasizing self-cultivation, rule by virtue, and moral appeal. Its default assumption is that those in power can and should be moral exemplars. Constitutional democracy, however, assumes the opposite. Those in power will inevitably abuse their power. Therefore, power must be decentralized, limited, and checked. More importantly, the Confucian system lacks an ultimate authority above political power, capable of judging authority. Therefore, historically, China's method of correcting tyrannical rulers has been dynastic change. Third, do Japan and South Korea, not traditional Christian societies, constitute counterexamples to their successful implementation of democracy? On the contrary, these two cases actually demonstrate the structural role of Christian civilization. Democracy in South Korea and Japan was not a natural, endogenous result, but rather forcibly embedded within a mature constitutional civilization system. South Korea, in the context of the Cold War, was incorporated into the US-centric political and security order, and under long-term external constraints, institutional support, and corrective mechanisms, gradually learned to operate a democratic system. Japan is a more obvious example. Before the war, it was a militaristic regime with a theocratic emperor system. After the war, under American occupation, it was forcibly implanted with an American-style constitution, a separation of powers, and a demystification of the emperor. Even today, Japan's democratic and security structures remain highly dependent on this external system. Therefore, these two cases do not illustrate that democracy is unrelated to Christianity, but rather that democracy can be transplanted, but only if embedded within a mature constitutional order shaped by Christian civilization. Historically, the emergence of democratic constitutionalism requires three simultaneous conditions. First, a fundamental distrust of human nature, namely the Christian doctrine of original sin. Second, an ultimate authority above political power, God's final judgment. And third, Universal and inalienable human dignity, the equality of all people by creation. Historically, only Christianity has systematically and simultaneously presented these 3 points and sustained the long-term operation of civilization. I am not saying that Christianity is superior, but merely objectively describing a fact. Christian civilization's judgment of human nature is more pessimistic, and it is precisely this pessimism that fosters institutionalized freedom. Christians advocate humility precisely because we feel that we are truly worthless, and without God's guidance, we will ultimately achieve nothing. Final judgment. Third, universal and inalienable human dignity. All people are equal because they are created. These 3 points have appeared systematically and simultaneously throughout history, sustaining the operation of civilization for a long period. Only in Christianity. I am not saying that Christianity is superior, but simply objectively describing a fact. Christian civilization has a more pessimistic view of human nature, and it is precisely this pessimism that has given rise to institutionalized freedom. Christians advocate humility precisely because we feel that we are truly worthless, and without God's guidance, we will ultimately achieve nothing.